Yeah, well, when we install these nets, it's like the end of February. Sometimes we do it in the middle of February, and it's really cold. Sometimes we do installs and there's still snow and ice on the ground. So you can imagine getting into streams like at the end of February. It's really, really, really cold. So, starting the project then, and then kind of moving into like this time of year where it's like things are beginning to turn green and the birds come out. It's really incredible being in a stream every day, like watching the transition. And then you kind of also watch things in the stream come to life. Like when we first installed the nets, there really isn't anything like in the water except glass eels. And then slowly we see other fish like we did today, tessellated darters, scuds, and then all of a sudden by the middle of May, you're finding like algae covering your nets, you're finding herring eggs, you're finding so many macroinvertebrates. And so you really just like day by day see the ecosystem come to life after like a very, very quiet winter. So that's a really cool part of the eel project. Like it's not just about the eels, but it's about watching everything come back after winter. We are citizen science or community science research monitoring project, and we're studying the American juvenile eel. And the life stage we're studying is the glass eel, and this is the life stage where the eels, they're hatched in the Sargasso Sea, kind of in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. And when they're leptocephali or eel larvae, they swim through the ocean and they use the Gulf Stream to kind of swim up north. And some of them will go to Canada, some of them will go to Florida, but our eels will swim up the Hudson River estuary. And while they're swimming up the estuary, they're turning from the eel larvae to the glass eel stage. And so we're collecting them in our nets. And we're doing this for a couple of reasons. One, because we don't know a lot about the American eel. We don't have a very good baseline understanding. And so this project tries to get at developing that baseline of the glass eel migration in the Hudson River. Once the eels get here, they spend 5 to 20 years here, depending on if they're males or females, and then they return to the ocean to spawn, to reproduce, and then they die out there, so they never really return again. And so this glass eel project really helps us understand the glass eel migration up the Hudson River.
Funny when you're here the day before because if the knot's tight, like it's too tight, you can't complain because you're like, I did this.
Right.
I did this to myself. So we're taking off orange. That's also something we write in the binder, and then we'll write which one we put on afterwards.
Yep, and those are nothing scientific. They're just vandalism and indicators.
Yeah. In case anyone wants to get into the net, which is unlikely, but you never know.
First thing we look for is the net funnel. Now this is the very end of that entire assembly. This is where the eels come out of and wind up in this chamber here.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh wait, there's more down here, I think.
Okay, there you go.
Come on, buddies.
Oh, what are we doing?
Come here.
Okay, Victoria, it's all
slimy.
yours.
Oh,
Good
got all
job.
kinds of
Oh,
things.
no, I dropped
Good
it.
job, good job.
Come on,
There you
you're
go.
okay. There you go.
I think it's a weatherfish. This like exclusion mesh is a little coarser than the other sites, so you get like the more elver eels and fish here, which is exciting. Maybe not as good for the glass eel survival, but it's exciting.
Yeah. An ideal net would exclude anything thicker than a grass eel.
So you wouldn't get as many elvers either.
Right.
He's slimy.
But different manufacturers use different materials, and
Good job.
this one lets in some bigger stuff.
Gotcha.
Grass eels coming in react to the flow coming out of the creek. Their instinct is to swim upstream. We don't want the net to impede that flow. We want the eels to sense the flow and follow it right up in. But you can see how clogged up this fine material gets. Whatever you call this kind of fine material, sediment. So we got to keep it nice and clean so they happily swim up into the net.
something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure Annie scampered right up, so I will scamper right up. Yeah,
No, I fell up.
Does that qualify as a scamper?
And then you just have to push the rock back on so that when the tide's really low, the helmet's still underwater.
Well, we're all involved in like life science classes at our school, and what we're here to do is we're collecting like the glass eels, and if we have any elvers, the eels that like come from the Atlantic when they're laid there, and then they swim up here, and then they go through their life cycle here. And what we're doing is we're counting and collecting them, and like helping the DEC and stuff. Fatima and Olivia are going to be the veteran eelers to help everybody else out who are going to check the net. Do you guys feel good about that? Do you not? I can also put on waders or just walk into the stream if you need help.
I love that they could actually do real science. Like, it's contributing to a great data set that's been going on for quite a few years, and it's good to do authentic science, because sometimes in class we just do, made up labs, things to kind of teach concepts, but this is actually teaching some concepts that are ecological, but also creating a real data set that's useful for management. So it's kind of
Oh, extra points if you grab the trash that's floating down river.
be careful.
You have a recorder, you're on it. You just want to make sure that you don't double count and you're very clear. I put some water in my bucket. The idea here is to count every eel one by one.
Right now, I'm putting down data so that we know like the environment temperature, the water temperature. This is where we'll put how many eels we caught and like who is here, the dates and stuff like that, so we know what's like affecting.
I have a net full of glass eels in my hand, and they're really good at swimming down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point my net down, and then I'm going to count in my head. And then when I hit 10 eels, I'm going to say 10 or eels, whatever works, and then you'll make 10 tally.
11, 12.
You know what? I'm glad I had 3 pairs of pants in my backpack. What? You got 3 pairs?
14.
My sister eeled last year and I never went, and she always told me it was super cool. So then this year I decided to try it.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's fun. I got to catch all the fish today.
What about you, teacher?
Well, I've done projects with Carey Institute and Beacon Institute.
Oh, no, don't go
and,
getting girly on me.
actually, I know Chris Bowser from teaching environmental science at Marist.
Yeah. And what do you think it gives to the students to come and do this?
I like anything that gets them outside and observing and gaining an appreciation for nature. And I hope they also find the interactions amongst species as interesting in the way I do.
Of course, I'm supposed to be more objective. I'm not supposed to be rooting for big numbers or anything. A good scientist is objective, not subjective. Doesn't wish for data. Doesn't wish for the data to look a certain way. But that's why it's fun being a volunteer and not a paid scientist, because I can act as silly as I want and theorize and speculate and just have a good time.